Hi there. In this lecture we see an absolute classic encounter between Mikhail Tal and Vasily Smyslov, who was also a past world chess champion. So this is in 1959, the Bled Zagreb Belgrade Candidates Tournament, round 8. Tal kicked off with e4. We see a Caro-Kann. d3, a modest reply, it seems, a modest system. d5, we see knight d2. And now Smyslov takes the centre with e5. It seems a lucrative thing to do. Knight gf3, and now knight d7. In fact, this might actually be an inaccuracy. It seems as though black needs to tread carefully here and actually play bishop d6, believe it or not, to be able to answer, to be able to meet this d4 move with e takes. And, for example, bishop d3, knight e7, this should be about equal this position. The way it's being played here with knight d7, white does have a very strong move, it seems, d4. It opens up the bishop, and it kind of questions this setup. It doesn't seem quite right with the bishop kind of blocked in by the knight here. We see, in fact, now, with the pressure on the black position, d takes e4, and sometimes when you play a forcing move, it sometimes gives the opponent a bit more energy in the position. It's kind of developing the knight aggressively now. And there's another taking move. So, you know, the expression to take is a mistake is because sometimes you're giving the opponent little upsides that they can use against you. And here now the queen can actually go to a very interesting central square where it's not easily kicked. So it's eyeing the board. And it also means that castling queenside could happen later as well. So has black really significantly helped white here by these capture moves? We see knight gf6 and now bishop g5, bishop e7, and now white resists the temptation to simplify potentially with knight d6 and actually just castles queenside. We see black castling. And here, knight d6 is played. Queen a5. Now we have the move bishop c4, b5. And it turns out here, white needs to be pretty careful. If the bishop drops back, in fact, black can use that queen as a tempo gainer with c5 and then c4. This would make things pretty complex. With an incoming c4. So, in fact, things take a very strange turn of events. We see bishop d2. Engines seem to think that bishop takes f7 is not entirely terrible. Usually it's a bad deal to give up knight and bishop for rook, but this position, because of these kind of sleepy pieces, might actually be okay for white. But it seems only enough in theory. Well, this is a good continuation where white ends up actually slightly better, but there might be other ways to play this. If we look at this again with bishop f8, this is also kind of interesting. So anyway, with best play it might not be actually getting an advantage, but it's interesting to consider. But we have bishop d2. The queen goes to a6. On queen a4 again, bishop takes f7 check becomes interesting. This idea, the pawns are shattered, and white has a certain amount of compensation, at least enough it seems for a draw, for example, like that, in some variation. So anyway, queen a6. Now here, instead of moving the bishop, Tal attacks the opponent's bishop with knight f5. So we have the bishop going to d8, and here is the game becomes really quite amazing. Can you spot Mikhail Tal's next move here? This is really an iconic sequence of events from this position. I did once cover it, or maybe twice on YouTube. It's a fantastic game in a way. So what would you play here if you were playing with the white pieces? It's this idea is kind of born out of necessity, because if we play bishop b3, c5 and c4 again is really kind of annoying. So in fact, Tal offers the bishop, he just plays queen h4. Rather amazing. And the point is, after b takes, to play queen g5, so threatening mate, severely limiting black's replies. So we have knight h5. It turns out also, g6 might be reasonable for black to at least be drawing, for example, like this, just encouraging a perpetual check. Essentially, white might not have anything better than that. But knight h5 was played, and we do have knight h6 check now, and queen takes h5. Now, queen takes a2 was played. If g takes h6, then bishop c3 check is actually rather dangerous. Can you see why in this variation, why this is so dangerous for 50 points? What would white play in this variation here? Okay, yeah, queen takes h6 actually, because then we've got knight g5 incoming. So here, knight g5, and what is actually defending, because these pieces are sleepy, this rook becomes a liability. There's no possibility of knight f6, because bang, queen takes f8 becomes a very good move. A weakness of the last move, generating a very, very good move there. So yeah, this is really quite kind of crushing, believe it or not, this scenario. There are other ways of trying to defend it, but it turns out that this is pretty crushing stuff with the queen takes h6 variations. So queen takes a2 was played, bishop c3, and now black goes hugely wrong. Knight f6 was played. It's easy to make a mistake in this kind of position with things pointed at the king and aligned to the king. Well, basically aligned to the king in various ways. So we have, this knight f6. If bishop c7, it turns out this might be one of the better ideas, introducing the possibility sometimes of bishop f4 check. If knight takes f7, white might have nothing better than to repeat. And the thing is, if black dares take the rook here, then queen takes f7 is actually winning. This killer common square really kills here, because also, queen f8 check and queen takes g7 or bishop takes g7 is mate. If bishop f6 was played here, actually knight g5 might actually still be quite nice for white. White has a small edge here. For example, no, let's not give an example there. Rather here, if g takes here instead of knight b6, then that would be a mistake again. Black has to think of every single move carefully. This is too strong an attack with convergence potentially on h7. So for example, this situation where white, is crashing through basically, there's a queen h6 coming. And if this is one of the better moves, then that's hopeless. White just smashes through here. It's just crushing. The whole thing's like crushing. So anyway, it turns out, knight f6 is the key mistake. But why, you might ask? So, there's a fantastic reason. So, for 500 points, what would you play here with white? Okay. Queen takes f7, trying to exploit a back row weakness. So here, if rook takes f7, then rook takes d8 check is mating, or knight f7 mate there, either. So queen a1 check was thrown in, but now in this situation, basically, it is tricky for black. We have black actually is about to be significantly down on material. So we have rook takes f7 being played. If queen takes d1 check, rook takes d1, this situation is down in material by a whole piece. White has 3 minor pieces here against the 2, discounting the rooks. So we have actually rook takes f7. Now knight takes f7 check, king g8, and now rook takes a1. If we look at this material situation now, although it's 4 pieces each, White does have the exchange up, a rook for one of the bishops. And this is winning at this level. Knight e5 check, king e6, knight takes c6 check. Sorry, knight takes c6 is not check, but knight e4 is check to white. But here, this situation is also kind of miserable with d8 and a7 hit. But this check really doesn't help. Can you see what Tal plays in this position, which is further increasing the advantage? Okay, king e3, and being prepared to answer bishop b6 check with bishop d4. This is like the strongest move, but it turns out here king takes e4 is also strong. This is kind of possible as well. It's kind of a winning position in any case with best play. But with bishop d4, that's neat because white is threatening bishop takes b6 against that pin's pawn. So yeah, this is pretty hopeless. If bishop takes d4, well, black resigned. If bishop takes d4 check, knight takes d4 check, and yeah, the knight's going to be lost. There's things like rook a5 check. If king e5 or king d5, the knight's going to be in big trouble. So if king f6, we're just going to take there. And if the king dares, move here, then we've got things like rook a5 check. Pardon me, rook a5 check. And here b4 is going to be winning material. That c5 pin is going to be painful. So yes, a fascinating game with tons of variations actually behind the scenes. I'm only sort of giving you a kind of glimpse of some of the variations. But essentially, yeah, if we want to take some takeaway points from this game, I think one of the big ones, there's a double emphasis here on to take as a mistake. But also, black, I'll get to that in a moment, black maybe underestimated the delayed d4. When is something a waste of time? Is it actually a waste of time? It's based on this configuration, it seems d4 is kind of exposing some downsides here of knight d7. It really sets some interesting, questions up for black about their setup here, which are pretty uncomfortable. So black taking here, it gives white this kind of pivot points, central pivot points for the queen later, was able to pivot to h4. But fascinatingly, the issue of c5, seemed to be completely overlooked by Tal and ended up sacking a bishop on that square instead of moving the bishop back. So this is a fascinating piece sacrifice. So with best play, it shows, if black was computer, yeah, there might be a way to not blunder here. But black is human. Even a past world chess champion is having difficulty against the might of Tal and the difficulties set. So, yeah, try and disprove Tal over the board, and it's very, very difficult. So knight f6, a huge mistake because of queen takes f7. So a fascinating, absolutely fascinating game here. So white is actually threatening the rook, and what does black actually do here? Apart from rook takes f7, that's a back row mate. So yeah, there's big, huge threats in this position. So yeah, black chose queen a1 check. Yeah, a fascinating game indeed. And yeah, leading to this bishop d4. So end of game there. One can only sometimes admire Mikhail Tal games for their enormous complexity, and it shows maybe in the style of Emanuel Lasker, a previous world champion, that Lasker also kind of was pragmatic in that he used complexity basically as a tool in the toolbox sometimes to win games. The pragmatic approach, rather than trying to play scientifically correct moves, in theory correct. The pragmatic moves are often related to complexity, because humans, we're not really set up for managing enormous complexity. Like this game, it represents enormous complexity thrown at the opponent and Smyslov breaking under the pressure. So yes, some interesting philosophical takeaway points as well as more concrete points about to take as a mistake, the delayed pawn move exploiting a certain configuration, the pivoting around the centre, the sacrifice of a bishop just to point things essentially at the opponent's king. That's a pretty intuitive consideration. Does it actually look good? How many pieces have I got aligned against the opponent's king? Looking at the sleepy pieces a la Morphy, can they be exploited sometimes for back row issues? There are a number of considerations that this game kind of represents. A lot of things to actually think about indeed. Okay, thanks very much. Hi there. Thanks for getting to the end of the YouTube video. If you would like to see other Mikhail Tal games, I actually have an amazing course for Mikhail Tal, which is currently at 4.9 with over 400 students. You can check this out from the Kingscrusher TV page. So Chess Strategy and Tactics, Mikhail Tal's amazing games. You can check out some free preview videos as well here. If you do expand all sections, you can see the preview links to get some free previews. So I hope you do check out this course index and the free previews. So I really had a thrilling time actually checking out Mikhail Tal's games. So yeah, the YouTube video here you saw was just a sample from this course. I hope you check it out. Okay, thanks so much. Oh, by the way, comments, questions, likes, shares, all appreciated. And if you did get to this part of the video, please do leave some sort of comment like Tal fan. Okay, thanks again.